They deliberately did this to hide from the profane people the powers that are in the inner consciousness, because they didn't want literal people getting a hold of these mysteries and using them for their own good. I mean, do you want to spend your life going and listening to preachers? Do you want to spend your life reading the Bible, half of which you can't relate to anyhow, 3/4 of which you can't relate to? Or do you want to now spend your life being a participant in God's universe and touching Him within you? That's the difference. The book of Revelation is about your body. The two witnesses that are spoken of in the book of Revelation are the pineal gland in your brain and the pituitary gland, the master gland in your brain. Did you know that? And that all of the fighting that goes on and all of the different nations and the rivers and the seas all deal with the endocrine system of your body, and that which is the upheaval in your body. And God, through revelation in the hidden mysteries of the East, is giving you directions on how you can put all of this together and how you can get your body and your mind in harmony. The Bible was not written by people from Pittsburgh. The Bible was written by the ancient Eastern people, and they knew numerology. They dwelled in the numbers of the zodiac. They dwelled in all various numbers that had meanings. Let me give you a quick rundown so you get an idea what I'm talking about. Hidden meanings. The number 1 means God, the Logos. The number 2 means body and soul, you and God. The number 3 means new life, resurrection, a new beginning. Jesus was in the tomb 3 days. Jonah was in the whale 3 days. The number 4 means your fourfold nature: physical, spiritual, intellectual, emotional. Okay? The number 5 means mediation. It also means sacrifice. I'm going to show you that a little later. The number 6 means doctrines, laws, religion. Number 7 means divine intervention. Joshua walked around Jericho how many times? 7. And the walls came tumbling down. 7 means divine intervention. There are 7 nerve centers, or 7 chakras that rise from the base of the spine to the top, which are the 7 levels which a person walks in order to find out, which is the pineal or enlightenment. It's all part of the Bible. It's all part of the ancient wisdom, which is covered up in Numbers. Number 8 means rupture, separation. Number 9 means the human consciousness. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Number 10 means completion. And the number of perfection in Hebrew is 12, which corresponds...
Remco, nog niet zo lang bij de club, maar daar was niks van te merken, hè?
Nee.
...to the most ancient zodiac. Let's take a look at the number 9. The numerical value to the word Adam in Hebrew in the ancient scriptures is 9. Everything had a numerical value, and that's why there is such mystery in the ancient scriptures, because they use numbers to deceive people who tried to think intellectually. The number 9 means Adam. Adam means earth. The earth means your flesh, your mind, your emotions, you know, the ego, the macho, the I will do what I think, and all this kind of business, okay? So when you use that number 9, it starts to reveal a lot of things to you. If you look in the Bible, you'll see many references to 3.5 or 42 months, 3.5 years, 42 months. That all comes out to 9. Let me show you how. You'll see it as 42 months. You'll see it as 3.5 years. You'll see it as 1,260 days, because 3.5 years is 6 months, okay, is 3 years and 6 months. That's 42 months. You take 42 times 30, you get 1,260, okay? Now, when you add 1, 2, and 6, you get 9. That's the number of human consciousness. That's the Bible's way of hiding from the literal and the intellectual, spiritual, significant, deep mysteries that come out of the times of Egypt and Chaldea. They deliberately did this to hide from the profane people the powers that are in the inner consciousness, because they didn't want literal people getting a hold of these mysteries and using them for their own good or to raise money the way these evangelists and TV people do. Okay, this isn't for that. This should not cost you a dime. I'll give you a symbol. Tithing. How much money are these people made taking 10% out of your pocket? Tithing has nothing whatsoever to do with money. It's symbolic. It's a hidden myth. And what it means is you have 10% of you that is the carnal mind. 10% of you is the left side. It is the negative side. It is the carnal mind. 90% of you is the right hemisphere, which is dormant. God is saying to you, give me that 10%. Give me your ego. Give me your flesh. Give me your will. Through meditation, shut off the thoughts of the mind. You shut off the 10%, which is you. You turn on the right hemisphere, which is the 90%, which is him. You have tithes. Now, let's look at the number 9. Like I said, we were going to look at the number 9. 3.5 months, 3.5 years, 42 months, they all equate to 1,260 days. If you look through the book of Revelation, you'll see all kinds of references to 3.5, 42, 1,260. They all add up to 9. So now when you have that key, that the number 9 means human consciousness, you can solve some riddles. You can solve the identity of the beast. Who is the beast? 666, okay? Who is 666? This is the way you have to do it if you understand Eastern mysticism that wrote that. You take 6 plus 6 equals 12, plus 6 equals 18. Now you have 1, 8, 1 plus 8 equals 9. The identity of the beast is you and me. our lower carnal mind. It's the beast that rapes. It's the beast that makes wars. All of these horrible things that you read about every day in your newspaper and see every day on your television. And we can look at the beast by going into our bathroom, turning on the light, and there's a picture of the beast right over your sink. It is your lower mind. It is that part of you that threatens you, that part of you that convinces you you're not going to make it past tomorrow, that part of you that says, well, everything's okay now, but what are you going to do if, and what are you going to say when you meet so-and-so next week, and all of this stuff that keeps you rattling and shaking and all of those things within you going nuts. That's the beast. That's hell. What about those who are saved? What about those who are going to heaven? In Revelation 14, it says 144,000. That means an endless number of saved. But look at the number, 144. 1 plus 4 equals 5 plus 4 equals what? 9. 9 means consciousness. The beast is the lower consciousness. Those who are saved are the higher consciousness, the upper room, the mountain experience, meditation. When you lift yourself up above, you come into being that 144 or consciousness in the higher realm. So 9 then means consciousness, and it shows either on the lower level, which is the devil or hell of the carnal mind, on the higher level, which is the divine mind. There's an interesting way you can see how the Bible specifically shoves this in, so you know it's a tip-off from the ancient people talking about consciousness. Jesus says to the fellows in the boat, look, if you want to catch fish, cast your net over to the right side of the boat, okay? What Jesus is talking about is not fish. Fish means wisdom. He's not talking about the right side of the boat. He's talking about directing your energy to the right hemisphere of the mind. You do that by turning off the left side in meditation. Now, how do we know? Now that we know that the number 9 means consciousness, how do we know that Jesus is talking about consciousness and not fish? You'll see there in that scripture, when Jesus says, cast your net to the right side, you'll see how many fish they caught. They caught 153 fish. Okay? 1 plus 5 plus 3 equals 9. 9 means consciousness. Therefore, Jesus is definitely saying, if you want to be filled with God's wisdom, if you want to be filled with God's understanding, if you want to be filled with God's knowledge of this universe and your place in it, then direct your energies to the right hemisphere. And Jesus told you how to do that by taking no thought. You must meditate. You must allow your eye to be single. You focus that energy right between your eyes and your forehead, and you focus energy there, and you bring yourself above all of those thoughts which are trying to destroy you. You bring yourself up into the bliss of the heaven which is within you, and then you fill with wisdom, you fill with understanding, and you start to activate the right hemisphere of your brain which has been dormant all of your life. Look, you see the same thing in the sky. You see the same thing in nature. The sun right now, as we're sitting talking, the sun in the northern hemisphere is sitting at the right hand. It is sitting in the eastern sky. And what happens when it sits in the eastern, or it sits in the right hand? It brings to life all that was dormant during the winter. It's symbolic too. Paul says the unseen things of God should be made manifest by the things that you can see. In other words, when the sun in the heavens sits at the right hand of power in the eastern sky, in the northern hemisphere,
waarom wassen als je kan stomen?
Everything which was dormant during the winter is gone. Now there were flowers, now there was color, now there was new life. This is what it means. When the Son of Man, the desires of the flesh, the solar plexus is raised to the pineal, the light is at its highest, the power sits at the right hemisphere of the brain, okay? And that then brings to life all that was been dormant in your life during the winter of your soul. Doesn't it make sense? This is what it's about. This is what the hidden meanings of the Bible are about. Everything that is out is in. It is all within you and at your hands to activate it and call it into active participation in your life. Now, and it's never too late. If you're 8 or if you're 98, it doesn't make any difference, because once you raise your consciousness above the thoughts of the mind, there is no age. Lucifer was never a person, was never intended to be a person, was never anybody by the name Lucifer. Lucifer means bright star. Okay? And the reason the name is given Lucifer, the star, and the reason the star, because it has 5 points. Sight, taste, touch, smell, hearing. Bright star. That means when your senses, your ego, are under control of the higher realm of God, then Lucifer. That means everything is under God's control. Fine. But when that star falls, remember Jesus said, I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning, the falling star. That means the 5 senses are now under the control of the ego. Sight, taste, touch, smell, and hearing are under your control. And then we got the problems with sex, we got the problems with drugs, we got the problems with booze, we got the problems with our mouth, we got the problems with gossip, we got the problems with the things we sin, we got all the problems with the things that we do. We are now in hell. Satan has arrived. That's what it means. Now, once this star fell, and once the five senses come under the control of the ego, okay, and this is what it means, how then are the five senses returned back up into the higher realm? There must be the sacrifice of the five senses. You've got to give the five senses up. You do that by taking no thought. But let me show you how the Bible describes it. Jesus comes along, and what happens? He takes the five wounds, doesn't he? His hands, 2, his feet, 2, and his side, bang, 5 wounds. And as soon as he takes that 5th wound, he becomes the Christ. He then ascends spiritually, and the five senses are returned to God. They fell with Lucifer to Satan. They return to the higher place with God. When the flesh is sacrificed, then the Christ consciousness ascends. That's exactly what the mission is for you. You see, all of this happened where? It happened in Golgotha. Golgotha means skull, which means it's consciousness. People say, oh, he doesn't believe it really happened. It doesn't make any difference. The point is, does it happen now? Does it happen for you? How can you make this? I mean, do you want to spend your life going and listening to preachers? Do you want to spend your life reading the Bible, half of which you can't relate to anyhow, 3/4 of which you can't relate to? Or do you want to now spend your life being a participant in God's universe and touching him within you? That's the difference. If so, then those 5 wounds must be taken spiritually as Christ, rising with him into the higher consciousness above human thought, in the skull, Golgotha, okay? Let me show you how the 5 wounds are acted out in your body. It happens to everybody. The whole message is the changing of the five senses of the ego into one, into a oneness with God, right? Well, let me show you how this happens. When you're born, and you can ask any good chiropractor this, when you're born, you have 33 vertebrae. But between the age of 1 and 6, there are 5 vertebrae at the base of your spine area, which fuse into one, and they become the foundation on which you stand. It happens. It happened to you. A miraculous thing happened, or not miraculous, that's a bad word, a natural thing happened to also show you, just as the sun in the sky does, what happens with Lucifer, what happens with Jesus, what happens with the 5 changing into one. Between the age of 1 and 6, the 5 bottom vertebrae in your spine fuse together and become one. The 5 changes into one, and that becomes the foundation upon which you stand. And do you know what they call that place in your spine? The sacrum. You know what it means? It means the sacred place, the holy place. And the reason they call it the sacred place or the holy place is because the 5 has come into being one. And that becomes your foundation. That becomes the entire foundation of Scripture. That becomes the foundation of the fall of man when the 5 are taken over by the ego, becomes the foundation of the resurrection of man when the 5 are given back through meditation and you rise up into Christ consciousness. That's what it's about. That's what happens. That's what the whole Bible is about.
And by far the most controversial, is called 1666, Redemption Through Sin, which revolves around the story surrounding one of the most notorious messianic figures in world history. In the year 1666, an exceptionally charismatic rabbi and Kabbalist by the name of Sabbatai Zevi declared himself to be the Messiah. Born to an affluent family in Western Anatolia, he was a particularly eccentric Jewish mystic who had attained a massive following, over 1 million devotees during his lifetime, roughly half of the world's Jewish population in the 17th century. His extraordinary popularity, according to historians such as Professor Gershom Scholem, resulted largely from the publication and availability of what is today called the Lurian Kabbalah, named after Rabbi Isaac Luria. His full name is Isaac ben Solomon Luria Ashkenazi, commonly known in Jewish religious circles as Ari.
Why dating a young Slavic woman is a good option?
Before we go any further, I'd like to go over his name, starting with Isaac, who in the Old Testament of the Bible is the firstborn son of Abraham and one of the 3 biblical patriarchs revered by Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Isaac was the father of Jacob and the grandfather of the 12 tribes of Israel. According to the narrative, he died when he was 180 years old in Canaan, where he was also born. Incidentally, Canaan is the biblical term. The Greek term is Phoenicia, which comes from the Greek word phoinos, meaning blood red. In Hebrew, Ben, as in Ben Solomon, means son, and Solomon was a king in Israel who succeeded his father, David. Incidentally, the symbol on the flag of modern Israel is sometimes called the Star of David, but also the Seal of Solomon. And I'll leave a link in the description to a video I did covering its occult significance for those that are interested. The next part of his name is Luria, which is usually attributed to one of two towns in Italy, which can be traced back to an ancient Roman family surname, but in the English origin is a contemporary girl's name which means brave lioness, which I'll expand on in a moment. The final part of his name is Ashkenazi, which comes from Ashkenaz, who in the Bible was a descendant of Noah. Ashkenaz was the first son of Gomer, with Gomer being the grandson of Noah through Japheth. Noah allegedly had 3 sons: Sem, whose descendants are known as Semites, who were Western Asian Caucasian people who lived throughout the ancient Near East, including the Levant, meaning Assyria and Babylon, the Arabian Peninsula, and parts of North Africa. Ham was another son of Noah, and from this branch we have the Caucasian North African people, including the ancient Egyptians with their blonde and red-headed pharaohs, and the Berbers or Amazigh, who were the original Moors that ruled parts of Europe for 700 years and are depicted like this in the art of the time. Which brings us to Noah's son Japheth, great-grandfather of Ashkenaz, an ancestor of the Slavs, Cimmerians, Medes, Ionians, Scythians, Cypriots, and many others collectively regarded as Aryans, who disseminated what are today known as the Indo-European or Aryan languages, including High German, which is where Yiddish comes from, the language of the Ashkenazi Jews. That said, let's get back to Luria, which I already associated with the lioness, but Isaac Luria's title was actually Ari, which is the Hebrew word for lion. In Greek, Ari is a common shortened version of Greek names like Aristotle or aristocrat, the majority of which are compounds of the adjectival superlative aristos, meaning best or superior. Ari and Bagdaga, a southern Dravidian language, means sun-like. In Scandinavia, meaning Old Norse, Icelandic, Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish, Ari means eagle, which it can also mean in German and Hebrew, but its primary meaning is lion, in the context of the sun at its brightest point. Esoteric interpretations of all Abrahamic religions, as well as all religions associated with Aryans, such as Hinduism and the Mithraic mysteries, which means the Iranian religion of Zoroastrianism, and any others, use solar symbology or sun worship as a hidden occult representation for deeper esoteric philosophies, which are veiled in symbolism and withheld from the general public. In mystery school religions, or what became known as alchemy, as well as in the zodiac, the lion is the sun at its highest or most exalted point. While the term Aryan is often associated with Aries the ram, keep in mind that to the ancient Aryans, the real New Year is in the spring, the time of Aries, and the prefix AR is a solar reference, such as in the word Armenia, where AR or R is the name of the sun or sun god. The ancient Armenians called themselves children of the sun. When we look at the flag of Iran, we see the sun with a lion. Now, I know a lot of people will have trouble with this because Iran, which is traditionally considered land of the Aryans, is at odds with the modern state of Israel, or the German nationalists of World War II also claimed lineage from ancient Aryans and were also in opposition to the people today collectively known as Jews. Putting political ideology aside for a moment, the term Aryan, in the context of how it appears in the Hindu Vedas or etched in 2,500-year-old cuneiform in stone reliefs in Iran, Aryans were regarded as the nobility, a class of people of the elite caste from whom Gautama Buddha is also descended, as he was born of noble blood before he denounced his status to pursue the Noble Eightfold Path, which was originally called the Aryan Eightfold Path, before they replaced the word Aryan with noble, as they're interchangeable. But the term Aryan has been shunned by academia and the media after World War II. The point I'm trying to make is that the rift between the ancient tribes known as Aryans and the alleged lost tribes of Israelites, they're one and the same, which becomes evident when one analyzes the mythology, biblical and secular history, genetics, and occult symbols disseminated since antiquity. I've already explained why the royal families of Europe all share genetic affinities, including blood type, and why so many use the Lion of Judah with its tongue sticking out as a national symbol of nobility, mimicking the coat of arms of Jerusalem, where Isaac Luria was born. I'll leave a link in the description to my video on lion symbolism. In rabbinic literature, the kingdom of Ashkenaz was first associated with the Scythian region, then later with the Slavic territories, and from the 11th century onwards with Germany and Northern Europe.
De aandelenmarkt staat op dit moment in de fik.
The new Lurianic Kabbalah enjoyed broad dissemination in the 1500s, thanks to the invention of the printing press in the previous century. Jews from around the world for the first time had access to occult literature about the deeper meaning of their faith, and the popularity of Jewish mysticism soared. A key aspect of Lurianic Kabbalah is that it required active participation to set the stage for the arrival of the Messiah, to about conditions that would initiate or directly expedite the fulfillment of Jewish messianic prophecy. In other words, instead of simply waiting for God to act, the Lurianic perspective expected Jews to play an active role in bringing forth God's kingdom on earth. This new European Kabbalah, as opposed to the older Chaldean version, is unanimously attributed to Luria and was extremely popular at the time and still is the most broadly disseminated and used Kabbalistic system taught today. Part of this Kabbalistic method included ways of interpreting the supernatural relationship between events and time offered through letters and numbers. The magical emphasis given to the numerological value of dates contributed greatly to the widely held expectations and hope placed on the coming of a Messiah at the time, particularly the 18th day, which is 6 + 6 + 6, of the 6th month of the year 1666. Most people have heard of Jesus Christ, considered the Messiah by Christians, and who lived 2,000 years ago. But very few have ever heard of Zabbatai Zevi, who declared himself the Messiah in 1666. By proclaiming redemption was available through acts of sin, he amassed a following of over 1 million passionate believers. As I said, about half the world's Jewish population during the 17th century. And although many rabbis at the time considered him a heretic, his fame extended far and wide. Sabbatai's adherents planned to abolish many ritualistic observances because, according to the Talmud, holy obligations would no longer apply in the Messianic time. Fasting days became days of feasting and rejoicing. Sabbateans, as they called themselves, encouraged and practiced sexual promiscuity, adultery, incest, and religious orgies. Sabbatai Zevi's messianic claims were rejected by the leading rabbis of Jerusalem, as well as the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, who offered to behead him if he didn't convert to Islam, which he immediately did, Sabbatai's formal conversion to Islam really dismayed many of his followers, to say the least, but those who continued to be loyal to the Sabbatean movement took it as a sign to also convert to Islam, while secretly maintaining their Jewish identity and mystical occult practices, which included religious orgies and sex magic and sacrifice. His followers are known today in Turkey as the Dolme, which translates to religious convert, a derogatory term which they themselves never used. And so the Lurian Kabbalah became a mystical synthesis between pagan or esoteric teachings which preceded the Torah and Gnostic elements of Judaism. Many texts pertaining to the Kabbalah, including the Zohar, say that the task is not to destroy evil, but to return it to its source. To put it simply, to include the left within the right in a Zoroastric metaphor, or to uplift the fallen sparks in the Lurianic one. The rapid spread of the teachings of Rabbi Isaac Luria, the Ari, or Aryan Lion, and his Lurianic Kabbalah resulted in a grafting of the then current theories of the Kabbalists onto the traditional Jewish view of the role and personality of the Messiah. This new philosophic paradigm, in the estimation of many scholars, provided a spiritual justification for proactive Zionism, and therefore the events that directly brought about the modern formation of Israel, which incidentally did not start in 1948 with the War of Independence, but a century earlier with the German Messianic settlers known as the Temple Society, or Templars, who supported the nationalist German party of the 30s, many of whom also populated Palestine during the transfer agreement, where tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of German Jews were covertly resettled into the Holy Land by the German nationalists the decade prior to World War II. After Sabbatai Zevi's death in 1676, his Kabbalist successor, Jacob Frank, expanded upon and continued his occult philosophy. Frankism, a religious movement of the 18th and 19th centuries, centered on his leadership and his claim to be the reincarnation of the Messiah, Sabbatai Zevi. He, like Zevi, would perform strange acts that violated traditional religious taboos, such as eating fats forbidden by Jewish dietary laws, ritual sacrifice, and promoting orgies and sexual immorality. He often slept with his followers, as well as his own daughter, while preaching a doctrine that the best way to imitate God was to cross every boundary, transgress every taboo, and mix the sacred with the profane. Jacob Frank would eventually enter into an alliance formed by Adam Weishaupt and Mayer Amschel Rothschild called the Order of the Illuminati. The objectives of this organization was to undermine the world's religions and power structures in an effort to usher in a utopian era of global communism, which they would covertly rule by their hidden hand, the New World Order. Using secret societies, many through infiltration and corruption, their agenda has played itself out over the centuries, staying true to the script. The Illuminati handle opposition by a near total control of the world's media, academic opinion leaders, politicians, and central banks. Still considered nothing more than a theory to many, more and more people wake up each day to the possibility that this is not just a theory, but a terrifying, factual, and explosive conspiracy.